With me is probably Mrs. Medical Marijuana herself. This is Angel Raich, whose name has become a household word with medical marijuana patients. Angel Raich is the defendant in the case that went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. Before we get into some more issues, what's your life been like ever since you've become this kind of, you've been everywhere on every TV station, you're like almost a household name. What's it been like?
Oh, well, it's a lot of work. It's tiring, but I think that the more I do it, the more that it actually feeds and gives back. And I think that it's very important that patients understand, exactly what the federal government is doing, and not to mention the fact that it's very important that the message get across to the American people that this is a safe and effective medicine, and that patients should not be prosecuted and should not be persecuted and have their medicine seized and taken away and be incarcerated and have guns in their face by the federal government. I don't believe that's right.
And of course, this is what happened to you. Is that correct?
No, I actually have never been. Well, I can't say I used to say I've never been arrested, but just a few weeks back I actually was arrested. So
tell us about that.
Well, I was actually protesting at the federal building because the federal government, after they ruled against me in the Supreme Court, went after a patient collective, and the patient was trying to open the door, and the DEA basically kicked in the door, knocking the patient to the ground, also dislocating his shoulder. And I just was very upset about that, and I felt like I was also partly responsible because I went to the Supreme Court, I lost, and if I would have went to the Supreme Court and won, that would have not have happened. So
now the case you're talking about is Gary Silva, right?
Yes.
Yes, he's in Riverside County. He,
yes,
in fact, is on our show. He just spoke at our meeting last week. So it's interesting. Angel's talking about a case that actually takes place right in Riverside County, the Gary Silva case, whose house in Sky Valley was raided. Okay, now your case is important. What were you trying to do with your case that went to the Supreme Court?
Well, when it went to the Supreme Court, that was really about the Commerce Clause. Because of the fact that the cannabis never left the state of California, because of the fact that there was no money changing hands, because there was no distribution, my caregivers were specifically growing my medicine for me. It was my medicine the entire time. Therefore, we were saying that because there is no commerce, therefore we should be allowed, and the Controlled Substances Act should be found unconstitutional as applied to me and my co-plaintiffs, and we should be allowed to possess and use, cultivate cannabis and without federal intervention. So we went to the Supreme Court, and it was 6-3, and we lost. Right. So now we're back in the Ninth Circuit, and we're waiting on a decision from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal right now.
Now, you said that you're still using medicinal marijuana, even though the Supreme Court ruled against you.
Oh, yeah.
You were very defiant. And what is the reason for you personally that this is so important?
Well, the fact of the matter is that without cannabis I would die. And that's no laughing matter, and this round is really about the fundamental rights to life itself, also about the fundamental liberties to life and medical necessity. We also have a little bit of the 10th Amendment, but we're more or less trying to preserve that argument, not really doing much with the 10th Amendment, but the fact of the matter is that without cannabis I would die, and so that's what this is really, this phase about the case is really about the right to life.
So it's interesting that not only do you have to know about the medicine that's important to you, you seem to have to know about the law too.
Well, yeah, because I feel that if you're going to knowingly, not follow the federal law as it is right now, patients can get arrested by the federal government. The federal government can unfortunately get away with that. However, if I happen to be successful in the Ninth Circuit again, it will stop all of that, and it will make patients safe again until we get to the Supreme Court phase. But, the whole thing is that I don't believe that patients should be persecuted. And so if I have to go up against the court system, if I have to go up against the federal government to whatever extent, to whatever level I have to take it, the more they step it up, the more that I want to step it up. So
obviously this medicine is very important to you. You're willing to make a lot of sacrifices. What would you tell people out there who are considering using marijuana medicinally but are kind of afraid of the law? What would you tell them?
Well, I think that knowing the law and knowing your rights is really the first and foremost, most important thing. And then once you make that conscious decision to do that, you really need to inform yourself everything you possibly can about the law in your local area, because each county has its different standards, and you really need to try to know what the state law is versus also the federal law. And I think that it's also important that if you are cultivating, not to talk about it. Don't tell your friends and your friend's friend, and don't brag about it, because the last thing that you want is the local law enforcement that happen to feel that they work with the feds, so therefore they can do whatever they want and not follow state law. That way you're not subject to having to deal with them on that type of a level. But I think that it's very important for patients to get involved. So I would say that it's very important for them to contact their local congressman and talk about this and get their local congressman involved.
Would you recommend that people get involved with MAP in Riverside County?
I think it's very important. Yeah, I think that it's very important that they get involved with whatever organization. There's so many. You are a good organization. Americans for Safe Access is a good organization. There's also so many other very good organizations, and I think that what I would like to see your organization do is, if there are other organizations out there, I'd like to see you guys all band together and get a united, front if there are out there.
I wish there was other organizations out there.
If there's not, then all the people in your local area, it's definitely important that you get out there. And so I'm glad that you're doing that for your area, because I think that oftentimes patients don't know where to go. And so if you are the one that is in their community that is doing the outreach, it's important for them to have access to you, whether it's your website, whether it's your phone number, whether it's no matter what it is. And
like our TV show.
Sure. Yeah. I think that, it's all very important. I think that it's very important to have really a united front with no matter what you do. And illness doesn't really have a face. That's, I think, what I want to send with you.
Well, thank you. That's a great way to end the interview. Thank you, Angel, for joining us here at the 4th Annual Cannabis Therapeutics Conference.
Great.